Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Seddon and Lacey's Comic Stash, where this week we are doing Where to Start with Batman.
With life.
Oh, we're not going that deep. Fucking hell. We'd be here forever.
Oh yeah,
As
yeah, but and we'd still end up on Batman. That's
yeah.
that's the trick of it, yeah.
So, as always, that's Seddon, I'm Lacey, and follow all of the joys of the Renaissance Men by following the channel, liking, subscribing, ringing the bell, all the YouTube shit for all of the wonderful content that you find here. And as always, if you are just listening, watch, look at our faces. Oh,
That wasn't very good for the audio people, was it? As I put their face there, that won't scan very well for them. So yeah, watch us.
Watch us, never seen it. But if you do just take us orally through the ears and just listen to our words, then rate, review on the podcast player of choice. All of those stars, so people know about it.
Until someone sponsors us, we will allow you to listen for the one of your choice. But if anyone ever sponsors us, we're going, no, listen to the one we say. Some cash money.
So, with this one, as I said, it is an introduction to where to start. And I'm going to start it with.
Well, I was going to say, Chris, just before we move on, it is something, just for people watching, it's something that we've had a discussion about. It's one of the first things we actually talked about, wasn't it, of doing a few bits like this. And this is the first, not necessarily in a row, because we're trying to kind of cut up like the topics, but we are going to revisit this as an idea for other characters. So like a bit of for if you are a long-time comic book reader, or if you're just watch the movies, or if you just like listening to us but you're interested in getting into the hobby, the kind of idea is to give people an idea of what might be good starting points or good introductions to some of these characters. So you won't come right into the middle of the most complex story ever and go, I've no idea. But yeah, this is the first of probably many that we'll do across a lot of the characters that are in DC, Marvel, and hopefully a bit of Image Comics as we go down the road.
Yes. So, as I was saying, where we're going to start is for the kinder. Where to start with the little ones, the tiny ones. Get it into them at the young age. Is with something that I had for Will, which is 5-minute Batman stories. So, it isn't a graphic novel or comic of any real thing. There's a few pictures here and there, but it is mostly just text. But they are short, little 5-minute, very child-friendly stories about Batman. So there's one where he's got to go and stop Catwoman from robbing a bank. One where he's got to go and stop Joker at the funhouse. Very much very suitable for little kids. He might punch him, but that's about it on the violence side.
Do we get any superb old school kind of sound effects that go along with the punches? Do we get any kapows or anything like that, or is it all just...
but Will did, because when I read it out to him, I did throw in voices and sound effects and all the joys.
See, there's a future episode, isn't there? We'll get you to read us a story out loud and do the voices.
Maybe at some point. Is there a bottle of JD involved?
Yeah, and unfortunately the stories won't be comic book ones. I'm going to get you to read me some smutty stories from Readers' Wives or something like that.
So, on a completely different note.
I like the idea of something like this because, as you say, like an entry point for a lot of people are when they're a kid, or if you are an adult, you might want to introduce your kids into this as a hobby, and it's nice to know where. I mean, not having any kids yet, it's not something I've kind of ever experienced or know anything about. But even that, just hearing that, I thought that sounds quite cool. I quite like the sounds of that.
Yeah, so it's the thing is like for Will, we had the Batman one, there was a general DC one, and there was a general Marvel one. They're on Amazon. They're about £6-7 a pop. They're not overly expensive, and they do say that you should promote reading to kids.
Yeah.
at least start them with things that you hope that they grow an interest into. And the thing is, a lot of kids will run around with figures
Yep.
or doing dress up as superheroes, but they, other than maybe the cartoons,
Yeah.
they're not going to have any sort of knowledge of where they are or who they are. They just know, oh look, I'm dressed as Batman. Who's Batman?
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm Batman.
Yeah. He's that guy. Everyone
Yeah,
knows who Batman is. But yeah, as you say, like having that sort of frame of reference or that context for, and then, like it is. We always talk about this as a hobby, but I mean, one of the things that attracted us to it, and I guess kept us over many years, is the stories. And you go, well, actually, if you can get that story element into the mindset of a child early, and yeah, you said it there. I mean, I was when I was a kid, I read a lot. I don't really know why. I presume my parents encouraged me, but I don't know whether they did or not. But yeah, I loved it, and I think it gets you into a mindset later on, doesn't it? Probably makes you much more accepting of seeing the power of stories and the power of kind of sitting there and reading through something and experiencing it in that way. Which the world has moved on quite a lot, and of course you see a lot now. Everything is movies, cartoons, and they were there when I was a kid, but a lot
yeah,
more kind of video games and maybe that more um, passive experience of things. Whereas I think reading brings you into it, brings you
yeah.
into the story more than some other mediums do. So yeah, I like the sounds of it.
And the thing is,
Not
it's like
enough, not enough to have kids. Oh, I don't want that. I don't want anyone thinking that. I'm not going to go and start becoming a breeder just to do these stories. But yeah, it sounds cool to me.
but it's the thing is like it's Will obviously loves Fortnite, or as I like to call it, Shy Night. But they dropped in a load of Batman
Yeah,
characters, and he went to school knowing exactly who they were because there was Bane, Two Face, and someone else that hasn't really been seen in any of the modern films. I think it was
yeah,
Ivy. And he was like, "Yeah, I know who those are," and told his mates who they are and what they do because of his prior knowledge, because of obviously
yeah.
been brought up with it. So yeah, so that's for the littler ones, for the Jack and Ori corner of
Well,
the
and also, as you say, I mean, I'm sure as the adult in this, when you are conceiving of, I'm going to read a story to my child, I reckon it probably is a big selling point for you as well, isn't it? Like, because
yeah
you're getting, I mean, the idea, the concept of reading to your child, I'm sure some parents would say is enough. But I think if I was a parent, I'd much rather be reading something that I actually think is quite cool and interesting as well. So I think it
yes.
allows you as a parent to actually get something out of it as well,
There's only
beyond educating your kids, obviously.
there's only so many times you can read the Hungry Caterpillar and the cat sat on the mat.
Yeah,
That's why, again, off on a tangent, but I used to always make sure that we bought all the Doctor Zeus stuff for Will, just because I fucking loved it.
yeah.
So, these are fun for me to read to you, so enjoy it. So next is something that the one thing that I will say is better with Batman than a lot of others is as entry points. Batman has a fuck ton of standalones.
Yeah.
So these will be complete stories, sometimes a collection of episodes on issues, sometimes just actually released in that format because that's how they wanted to do it, and it was never
Yeah.
done as individual issues that way. But these may have a higher price point to come in at. Most of them sort of 12, 15, 20 quid sort of range, but you will get a complete story, which is obviously a selling point because if you're going to buy something, you want to start, middle, and end,
Yeah.
and not sort of gone, oh, I've missed a bit. You've got everything there.
Or you've paid £15, then realise that actually there's another £150 worth of trades to get the full story. So I
Yeah,
mean, you say about the price. I mean, the price is the price is the price. But I actually think probably comparatively, if you're looking for the entertainment value and the time that you'll get out of probably consuming one of these, it's probably a really good price, isn't it? You know, that's
Yeah.
not too different than going to the cinema and getting a bag of popcorn. And don't get me wrong, I love a movie and I love popcorn, but done in 2 hours and you're over. So yeah, I think comparatively probably are good price ranges for entry points.
Yeah. So, as I've rambled on first with the Kinder side, what of the Batman standalones would you start with?
I was just gonna, I was actually gonna make a joke about you went with the kids, and I'm gonna go with the old people and start talking about Batman Golden Age. But no, and one of the ones that I wanted to sort of talk about is Batman Year One, which is Frank Miller, and it is one of the kind of, and it's hard with Batman because we've talked about this. I think it comes across. We are both Batman fans, Bat fans, I guess, terminology. So that's probably why we started here. But with a character with so many well-regarded seminal kind of runs that really tell us something about the character. Batman Year One stood out for me on this because it is the story of his first year as Batman. It drops you into a world of you don't need to know anything really, as far as I'm concerned. Going in, I'm not saying it dwells on the origin because this is one of the things that we see from superhero media, certainly in the movies, and I think people do get burnt out on it. But you know, it does give you the origin, but gives it in quite a standard but visually impressive way. But it introduces you to Gotham and the cast of characters, and you see him struggle. You don't see him as the fully competent Batman that you probably see if you picked up an issue now, and then it gives you that kind of flavour of how he got there and how he becomes who he becomes, which I think makes for a really good entry point. I think seeing their kind of struggles along the way, and also it gives us a view of the crime families more than maybe
The supervillains.
the supervillains that we see later. Now, don't get me wrong, you do see some of those characters, but yes, for me, it is a great introduction to the Batman universe. I think that's why it really strikes out for me, and it doesn't do it any harm that it's bloody brilliant as well. Now,
Yeah.
the only thing I'd say with slight caution is potentially it shows its age. You know, like it's very noir, which we know Batman is, and when it was written, it's very tough, gritty crime noir. Have we seen a lot of that now, and probably it be done since, and maybe that would soften the blow a little bit of it, possibly. But yeah, you know, it's the origin story, but without it being the my parents were shot in the alleyway for 4 hours origin story. It's more
Yeah.
the how Batman becomes the Bat.
Obviously, one of mine that I was going to mention is technically the prequel with Year Zero, again, which is it is still the very early years of Batman, very similar to Year One, but does dwell a little bit more on what happened with Mummy and Daddy getting shot and what young Bruce was like, and the falling into the hole and the bats and all that stuff. So yeah, good companion pieces, those two. I would probably say start with Year One if I was going to go with either of the two. But if you were looking to fill it out, Year Zero is a good follow up.
It's got lovely art as well. I think it was David Mazzucchelli, I think is how it's pronounced, but it kind of fits, as I say, that noir Frank Miller-esque style. And I guess if there's anything I could say in other media that it's comparable to is I think some of the Dark Knight movies at certain points, the Dark Knight trilogy, I think very much lends the art style of that. And I think from what I can tell, the new Batman movie will lean heavily into that. So yeah, probably again even better time to maybe use this as an entry point is to experience that probably before you see it in a movie, so you can do some comparative elements to how it actually turns out.
Yeah, because I think the new film is going to be based off year one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it leans very heavily into some of the kind of plot points from that. And for the completionists out there, just so you know, because I know you mentioned year zero, there is a year two as well. Now I will.
Never read year two.
No, neither have I. So I couldn't say whether it's great, grand, and I think at the time, and it's a much more done thing now. But I think at the time I kind of rejected year two on the theory of going, oh, you're just trying to get my pennies by almost a cheap marketing campaign, a cheap attempt at a sequel. But they stopped there. You don't get year three, year four, year five. So
You
there's
don't get
only a
the
few
school
year
years.
whatevers. But you'll see that. I mean, again, for novices in the comic book world, you'll see sort of trends like that where I mean, I know DC have not necessarily year one, but done a few bits like this along the way where because that was popular, have tried to do a similar sort of thing with some of their other characters. But yeah, a cracking read, and as you said, Lacey, it's a self-contained story to a degree, so you can use this as a springboard to find other Frank Miller. There is good other Frank Miller Batman. You can use this as your springboard to find other Batman stuff. Full stop. Or you can experience this story in one trade and just go, yeah, I love that, and read it to your heart's content, I guess.
Yeah. Following with the Frank Millers, my first on the list is Dark Knight Returns, which this is rather a seminal piece because this is one of the first very grown up, edgier, more violent Batmans.
Yeah.
Obviously, up to this was very much the sort of detective and a bit campy, slapsticky sort of Batmans of the golden age. This one, don't give it to the kids. It's the first thing I'll say, because it is a very heavy story. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of darker elements in it.
Yeah. This you're spot on. This is definitely I was gonna say no grown-ups, but this is certainly for a mature audience, let's say.
Yeah.
Because and again, because of the content and because of the story beats that it's trying to hit more than it's not because it's kind of gratuitous or anything like that. But this is your grim and gritty, dark world of superheroes, or let's be honest, like more that vigilante side. This is what would happen with vigilantes in a crime-ridden city.
And again, as you said earlier, obviously with Miller's style being very much like the Dark Knight trilogy, there are a lot of story beats that are taken from this that are then put into the trilogy of films. Obviously changed a lot, but you can see where the inspiration for those bits came from.
It certainly felt, I think, when probably more so when we got to Dark Knight that was potentially even where he was going to go. I know at certain points there was rumours that there would be that he was on for 4, and the fourth one would effectively be something akin to Dark Knight Returns. But yeah, like it's got that vibe. I keep going back to gritty. I think this is when mainstream superhero comics start to probably pick up a lot of the stuff that a lot of the indie crime comics were doing, and you start to see those lines blur and it being less the villain of the week and the less and not as a knock because I love it, but less of the kapow zap sort of stuff to go in. Do you know what? We can tell some gut punching, wrenching stories, with these characters, and it's odd, isn't it? Because we're kind of picking this one out as a good entry point, but in theory, it could be considered the end. Like when he did it, it was almost like this is where the to a degree the Batman story could end. But I think that's what makes it a very good entry point of going. It fleshes out a lot, and you see the world at its, and I say the world at its conclusion. I don't want to suggest that there's Armageddon, but you see kind of the racks of what being a Batman does, and I think it makes you interested in going, wow, I want to know more about this guy and how he got to this point and that sort of thing. So I'm with you all the way. Has it been a great entry point?
Because and again, a lot of the bigger villains are in there, so you will see if you know the films or the games and stuff, and I see our previous episode with stuff about games and things, you will know the villains that he is going against. So you're gonna have reference points that you will know. So it's not complete and utter going in blind if you have a bit of pre knowledge.
Yeah.
But yeah, I said it was the first one on my list of ones of standalones because it a is a very gritty, very, as I said, grown up, mature story showing that this isn't just for kids, but also it is a very gripping story that you will just want to just crack on through.
Yeah, I think that not for kids or not only for kids. And I do hope that by this stage, the medium and the hobby is seen slightly different. Although I do know still with a lot of the masses it isn't. But I think comic books have permeated a lot more or hero stuff. But yeah, these really are touchstone moments, aren't they? Where you go, um, I could give this to anyone, and initially, they might give that sneer and reject it, but you know that if they sat down and read it, they'd go, "Oh, I didn't realize comics were like this.
Yeah.
I didn't realize these were the sort of stories that were being told." So yeah, yeah, a real kind of two thumbs up recommendation for me on that one.
What's next on your list?
Well, I think we both share a similar amount of love and a similar amount of desire to kind of do these ones as entry points. So I guess we'll just bounce around them. But let's go for Long Halloween first, shall we? And I think I'm trying to remember from the origin episode, but I think this is one. Was this one of the ones that someone recommended to you in the comic book shop, or
Yeah.
was it one? Yeah. Um, and what a great recommendation! And again, what a great pat on the back for someone doing a recommendation. So this is a standalone story. It was released as a limited series, but now obviously you can get it in this collected edition, and it's Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. And before I get into anything else, oh my god, this is gorgeous, isn't it? Like,
Yes. I have the blue cover edition, and about a month or two after, they then did the better full color cover one. I was like, bugger! I wish I'd have waited.
bastards. Yeah, yeah.
Because yeah, this is one that has been reissued a lot of times with a lot of different covers. So you will see if you ever go on Amazon, there's probably about 7 or 8 different
Yeah.
variant covers. All of them are fucking pretty, and it's one of those of if I had the space and money, I would probably end up buying them all.
Yeah, you could almost have a room just full of this, couldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I don't want to always get carried away a bit on this, but like, I dwell on it. I mean, sometimes the artist can totally sell something for you, and sometimes it can be in a certain style where it might be tricky. Like if you've come into this from and I was going to say animated only, but forget the Batman animated for the moment, because again, like, I think that's a slightly different bit. But if it was generic cartoons like Spider-Man in the 80s, the 90s, whichever cartoon,
Yeah.
I think you assume things are going to look a certain way. But I mean, this has just got an amazing. It's like someone drew it in the 50s, but like with the skill set of an artist now, and it smacks you in the face, and of course it goes along so well with what the storyline is. And we talked before this, and we're not going to go too heavily into stories. This isn't breakdowns of it. This is kind of why we think these would be good for you. But yeah, one for the art, you need to kind of come along for that. But the story is really interesting. Now, when I say it's really interesting, I think why it's a good entry point is you don't necessarily need to know anything going in. A bit of prior knowledge can help, but
Yeah.
it introduces you to a wealth of characters in the Batman universe, including Batman, and it frames it in kind of a mystery. But a mystery that also you don't need to know anything about going in. But if you do have a prior knowledge, again, it only enhances it. But that's why I think this is so great, because as a standalone story, I can't see how it wouldn't make people want to know more about all of these characters and seek out further stories, because it just has that great murder mystery-esque framing mechanism to it.
Yeah. And the other thing with this, because of how it's done, it's split into the seasons. It's done in the four
Yeah,
seasons. Each season is looks the same but so different.
yeah. Yeah, the
So
art palette, like the color palette, changes dramatically, doesn't it, with the
yeah,
season and things like that. I mean,
and
it is a triumph of design. I think
yeah,
even with the skill of like the boy can draw, but sometimes it's not just about being able to draw, is it? It's about how you get that across to as I say, the viewer, but the reader.
but yeah, as I said with that again, as I said, it's another. As I said, it's a perfect standalone murder mystery. You know, it could be there. So if you like an Agatha Christie, or if
Yeah,
you like that sort of Sherlock Holmes, or you know something that there's build up intrigue, this is one of the better detective runs in the. I say more modern. This is late 80s, early 90s.
90s it was released.
So you know we are at that point where we've had the violence of Frank Miller, because the Frank Miller stuff in
Yeah,
the 80s, the Alan Moore stuff in the 80s. So it's a callback to the murder mystery, the investigating detectiveness.
yeah.
Yeah, as I said, it's one of those that I would definitely say again. If you like mystery stories, have a it combines two things.
Well, that's the thing. We often talk about it, don't we? Like in everything that we consume, of going, if you can bend certain genres together, you can almost find two audiences there, can't you? Like,
Yeah,
if you like Batman, you're coming in for this. If you like murder mysteries, you can come in for this. And both parts of the audience will hopefully walk away with a new love of Batman or a new love of murder mysteries and things like
yeah,
that. But yeah, I mean, the you can feel the love for the characters come off the page. You can feel kind of the reverence that they put into it when they were creating it. And you know, this stands up there. We talk about the Frank Miller stuff, and I said earlier there were so many great stories on Batman. But I think it's these sort of ones where you can tell how much to create. They're not just turning up for a check. They had a
yeah.
story they really wanted to tell, and they had a message they really wanted to get across with it. And yeah, this one stands out for me. And as you say, there's so many sexy versions of it that you'll end up owning tons of them. You have shelves like behind us, like full of long Halloweens in there.
Next one I know we both put on the list, Hush, which again is a complete standalone story, and again another of the good detective mystery stories. Again, that another one pretty as fuck, so pretty.
It's so when we said about Long Halloween, and the same with Dark Knight Returns, they were kind of released as standalone limited series stories, and this one was in the Batman Monthly from memory, but it was kind of a bit of a touching point where, and it's Jeff Loeb again, same writer as Long Halloween, but I think after having these standalone stories, they kind of went, let's get this boy on the monthly title. And you say about the art, it pulls in Jim Lee as well. And uh, again, for people who don't follow comics or haven't for a long time, I mean, Jim Lee is probably still on paper the biggest name artist that there is out there. He was one of the Image founders. He contributed to the mass sales of X-Men of over 5 million copies, and very revered. But it'd been a long time since he'd done a monthly run on a character, and they got Jeff Loeb got him in to draw this, and yeah, as you say, it's a very. I mean, this one I would say is more in what a lot of people I think would consider as the more generic superhero style, the way that he draws, but it's Batman, so it's darker,
Yeah,
it has that kind of style to it. But yeah, this was a really kind of interesting moment because again, we're bringing you more into, I guess, the Batman regular series, but it's a story in itself, isn't it? It's a
yeah,
story where you get a beginning, a middle, and an end, and of course, yeah, the desire for all of these things is to for you to get the next trade or the next issue, etc., etc., etc. But you can experience this in one lump, and you could walk away at the end of it and go, right, thank you very much. I got that story. It is very good. But I think where this is a decent entry point is I think it will make you go, oh, no, 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 no. Where can I find more? What happens afterwards? What happens with these characters?
Yeah, because with this one, it does, because obviously it was from monthlies. There is a little bit more of, let's drop this guy in for a little bit here. Let's drop this villain in for a little bit here. Not to the level of sort of detriment where they are throwaway, but enough to, obviously with it being a monthly, they could put a different villain on the cover.
Yeah.
For the month.
And DNA wise, like we said with Long Halloween and to Year One and Dark Knight Returns, is you do see a lot of the characters that have been around in Batman for a long time, but done in the way of, I think a lot of people would leave this going, I want to know more about them, rather than being confusing, going, well, who the bollocks was that and why should I care? I think it sounds terrible, but I think they spoon feed who these are to you in a clever way, so it doesn't feel insulting. Like, as a long-term reader, when I was reading it, it wasn't like, oh, piss off. Like, I don't need you to spoon feed me. I think they've done it in a really good, intriguing way. And actually, there's parts of this story that have, I'd say, some deep-seated Batman lore in them. Yeah. Where actually having some prior knowledge would really enhance the story. However, again, not to the detriment of the story, because I think for those who have no prior, they give you enough or the right amount of information to make you go, I understand the story, and potentially I now want to go and buy the stuff that happened before to see how we got to this point. So I'm a big fan. This is a huge universe. The guy's one character. He's Batman, but we said it in so many other shows. Batman is the main character, but you've got all the villains. You've got the Robins or Robin, depending on what time it is. You've got the Alfreds, and this brings you into that universe and goes, here is a really nice look at everything that can be done with Batman. Do you want more? And for me, certainly, when I read it, I went, yes, please, give me more, give me more.
Yes, it was a wonderful one. The next one on my list is it's an entry point, but it's also a massive story arc that is referenced ever since, which is Death in the Family. Yeah. This one is probably of all of them that we're going to talk about today, one of the most important stories on the basis of what happens in it. I'm not going to spoil anything because it is part of the big part of the story. But it is standalone. It is a self-contained story, but what happens in it changes Batman lore forever.
It's nice in that regard, isn't it? And then maybe Batman is just a very good character for this, because he's the one that stands out in my head when I do it, of going, this was in the middle of the Batman run. I can't remember off the top of my head what issue it is, but let's say, I mean, let's say it's issue 350 to 354 or something like that. So you go, well, 349 issues were released before this and more were released afterwards. So it is in that. And, again, having a bit of preemptive knowledge of how we got to the start of this story probably adds to the impact at the end of it. But it's done so well that I don't think you necessarily need that, but it adds that intrigue to go, what come before? But as I say, you can just literally take this out and put it as a trade, and you just go, read that, there's a story, and it works for me. It really does work. It's not relying on the 50 issues beforehand. But again, this comes down to the creators, doesn't it? It's possible to just Stan Lee always said, wasn't it, like every comic is someone's first.
Yeah.
So you need to kind of introduce them, and I don't think this hand holds so much, but it gives you the information you need so you can enjoy this story without having the backstory. But you know, you can then go and find out how the characters got to where this story starts. But yeah, I like that one, and again, I think I like it because we've touched on a lot of stuff that, bearing in mind, a lot of the stuff we talked about is sort of 30 plus years old. But I'd have no problem with putting it into someone's hands right now because the stories are so good. And also, if you're giving them 30-year-old stories, you know that then they have 30 years worth of more stories that they can lead on to, which, as we say, this is supposed to be about being an entry point. And, you know, you want somewhere to go with it. Or certainly that's what I did when I got into comic book reading. I wanted more. And knowing that there's more to come afterwards certainly worked for me.
And it's the other thing with that. It also shows that they're not always happily ever afters.
Yeah,
is all I will say. I will not go into any more. But I think it's the first one that I remember reading that I just went, hang on,
yeah.
That's not how that's meant to end.
Yeah, you know, like, and we said about regardless of where you are with it as an entry point, I think sometimes it is breaking that barrier down to go. It's not always going to be yahoo at the end. You know, good punches evil on the nose and everything works out perfectly. That there are consequences for the actions of what we do. I mean, I'll briefly touch on it now to avoid any spoilers for this story, but if you go back and listen to our deep dive on Nightfall, and Nightfall is one that I almost considered doing here because it has a degree of what we've talked about here of some nice introductions to the wider universe. The only reason why it probably didn't make this is, one, we've done a deep dive, so go and watch that instead. But
the size,
yeah.
I think the size is very off-putting with that.
Yeah,
because a lot of these are max 250, 300 pages.
Yeah. I mean, probably like the equivalent of sort of 6-7 issues and stuff like that. So yeah, you're not getting the what could be considered the foundations of a house like we found with the Nightfall ones. But you know, you get that in Nightfall. You get the grind. You get these are the tolls it takes on our heroes. They're not they have to work hard, or certainly in the case of Batman, he has to work hard to achieve this, and actually it takes its toll. And as you say, death in the family, even like things like Year One, I think they really kind of touch on. This is what it would be like, but without it, like, you know, it still has some fanciful elements to it. I mean, I didn't read it and go, well, do you know what, I could probably do that, but it just means there might be a little bit of aches and pains. You do need to train for years to be Batman. But yeah, I think it opens readers' eyes to, there are more to these stories than someone puts on, in this case, the cape and the cowl and goes out there and does it. It fleshes out that character. And I mean, my missus used to always be fascinated by, she knew I liked comic books. This is before, I guess, movies were the thing that they were. But the thing she would always say is saying, well, why doesn't everyone just know who they are? Because all they've put is a mask on and things like that. And yeah, you could get really reductive on stuff, but I think these are the stories that kind of show you why that doesn't happen. You know, like why heroes are heroes, why they keep their secret identities, why people would never think that it would be you because you can't do those sort of things.
Yeah,
but yeah, you know, that opening our eye to better, and I say better, really good storytelling. You know, that they are shining examples of it.
Joe, so have you got anything else on your list?
Yeah, I mean, one of the ones which I think slightly touches on maybe a little bit of where we were with Death in the Family, but it's Zack Snyder. God, sorry, Scott Snyder. It's the start of the New 52. So I think we've touched on it in another podcast, but just for context, DC rebooted all of their line into New 52, and every character got a new number one. And this is why I tippy-toe into this, because I think it's a great entry point, because I think you are getting a fresh number one. It says New 52 on it. and I think it's something that I think a lot of people would resonate with, is getting in at the ground floor of something. I will say it's not totally a fresh start. It does still have elements from stories that come before. It's not like the origin again. However, why I like it as an entry point is, yes, it is the new 52, and it will tell you about stuff that happened before that you need to know for this story and for the ongoing stories. But you get a lot of the freshness of it. It has a. I felt like it was a Batman that borrowed from many Batmen. You know,
Yeah.
from the Long Halloween Batman, from the Frank Miller Batman, from the 40s and the 50s Batman in sort of style. I'll very quickly say, it looks bloody lovely, but this one you probably need more than one trade. But I think you could start off with the first trade, see how it goes, and see whether that is an entry point, and then know that there are X amount after it. So you could almost start your Batman experience from them, and if you wanted to, take it up to the end of Snyder's run, or go even further than that, because the run after that's even better. But yeah, I feel like it's a good entry point because it's almost sold as this is how you would. This is how their new they wanted to get new readers into DC, and they designed it purely for this, and it is fantastic.
Yeah. Obviously, I've said in the first episode with like our top fives and stuff about the Court of Owls.
Yes.
Which is the first issue, and wax lyrical about it, and then. But you're right. It is a great start point because it is. Yeah, they've done it as a complete new start point.
Yeah.
It is. It is a brand new story arc starting from exactly when they want to start that story.
Well, and you said about the Court of Owls, and as I say, like see previous episodes, just wax lyrical, and I think we probably will do a standalone maybe on that at some point. But that's why I quite like this as an entry point. We've talked about other ones about fleshing out all the villains that are in there, but this, as we go on in the series, if you do decide to go further, you do see some of the classics, but it really smartly introduces new characters in as well, doesn't it? Like we do get new things added into the Spider-Man mythos that I think will be there in 30, 40 years' time. I think this is one of those series that introduces characters and concepts that aren't going to go away. They're not throwaway. They are the I was going to say yours and my kid when they're doing a podcast, my imaginary kid, in 30 years' time when they're talking about Batman. I think this sits snugly along with the stuff that we're talking about now that's 30 years old.
It's the thing. It's like you know how much the Court of Owls is a touchstone moment, and the new games being based on it. So the fact of it has now become a touchstone part of the Batman timeline and Batman lore.
And to touch on that, when they released that trailer, it was like a kind of wrestling markout moment for me.
Yeah.
When I saw they were doing the Owls, and I thought, like anyone watching that who hasn't read that, they're going to go, "Whoa, what's this? This looks really good." So yeah, like excellent stuff, excellent integration. But yeah, as you say, I think most games companies, or most people who don't understand the franchise, would probably go, "Well, why am I not getting Riddler, Joker, blah 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 blah?" But yeah, that's how much that's already become part of the pantheon of Batman. Is that most of his big villains, other than Bane, which I know we covered on Nightfall, but most of his big villains were introduced 60, 70 years ago now.
Yeah.
But these guys are kind of integrated into that, and as I say, great entry point because it does give you the world, does give you the universe. You do see those characters who you're familiar with, but I think it adds a lot of new to the universe in New 52. So I guess it bloody had to. So yeah, great entry point for me.
One I'm going to pull up is an omnibus.
Omniboo!
If you ever have the urge to see what 50s and 60s Batmans were like, A great way of doing this is in the omnibus stuff. They do a lot of them. A lot of them are character based. So obviously the one I have is Joker's one, Joker Clown Prince of Crime, and it is a selection of Joker's best stories from the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Yeah.
And these, obviously, these aren't standalone stories. They're not complete, you read the whole thing for a whole story, but they are two issue story runs that are the complete story for that, because back in those days, they didn't do, 6, 7, 8 part
No.
massive
Epics.
stories.
Yeah.
They were one and done or two and dones. So it is a great way to get that golden age classic feel, and also it's really interesting to look at what the art styles and how they were drawn back in them days. So yeah, these I know there's at least about 6 or 7 ones for each of the bad guys, because I've seen the Penguin one, I've seen the Two-Face one, I've seen one that's called Batman and Robin, so I'm going to imagine it's the one where they do stuff together. So yeah,
made it sound dirty then.
But yeah, no, and they're 15, 20 quid.
I said to you, like, one of the things that's kind of which is exactly the same arena is like the Batman Golden Age. I say trades. I think you can get them in hardcover as well, but it goes back to the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s kind of Batman run, and we talk about entry points. That is very old stuff now. So arguably, you go, well, is it necessarily an entry point for someone? But it is the origin stuff. This is the growth of the character from what he was, and standing behind me is beautiful Adam West. But I think a lot of we say about why might people want to get into this, and I think a lot of people might want to learn more because they watched the Dark Knight trilogy. Some people might because they watched Batman versus Superman and still had an interest, or they watched the Burton Batman, or they watched a TV show. And I think these sort of trades or these sort of collections are good entry points for probably people who are fonder of that time, a more simplistic storytelling time. So yeah, I'm with you all the way. I think they're great nuggets. And as you say, the idea of how you told a story was very different then. People weren't writing for 5 to 6 issue trades. They were writing to sell the next issue. And sometimes it would be a standalone, and the standalone's fine. Sometimes it would be 2 or 3 issue long. But, you kind of get that total gamut. You run the gamut of how the stories were told. And yeah, you're right. Like, some of the art it feels very basic now. But I think it's good as a exercise in how we got to where we got to today. Because, they were under very different pressures then. They probably had a very short window to get that shit drawn and get it to a printing press. And that's not to criticise it for being bad. It's still really good, but you have to kind of know the limitations and how they coloured things back then. Like they had old school printing presses, certain colour ranges. It is a very eye-opening experience from that side.
So yeah, so that is my list. Anything else on your list? That you have?
I wasn't going to do any more, but I'm now going to sneak one in, mate, because me, I don't like to.
You come here. We had a plan. We had order.
I like to change things on the fly. So when I mentioned the Scott Snyder New 52 Batman, and I like that because. One of the barriers I often think to comics, we talked about it earlier about stuff that was released 30, 40 years ago. And I know even in the world of movies and TV, people look, that was released before I was born, I'm not interested. So that modernises it, at least in release schedule. I'm not saying that those other stories aren't modern enough on their own. But I felt like at the last minute I needed to kind of pull that audible as well and talk about the Tom King Batman run that comes after Snyder. So Snyder does and the New 52 run, and I read that from start to finish, and I went, "Wow, what an amazing long run of Spider-Man and Spider-Man, sorry,
Batman, stop that.
Spider-Man and Spider-Man." Well, it's because there's a little Spider-Man pop behind my screen, and I just called it out of my eye. And I thought, do you know what? Probably for a long time, no one's going to top this. Now, we talked about initiatives that DC as a company did. So they did the New 52 as the idea of getting lots of new readers in. And I believe it was, at least initially, quite successful. And over a long period of time, Batman stayed successful, but it kind of petered out. Well, a few years later, they do something called Rebirth, which is, and I'm potentially going to lose people now as an entry point, but was another new introduction to readers where there were lots of number ones again. The kind of universe shifts again, and that's where we have the Batman run with Tom King, and it is exceptional. Now, maybe where it might struggle a little bit as an entry point is I really feel like having a working knowledge of the Scott Snyder bit before it really assists. As much as it's a rebirth, it very much kind of follows on in that vein.
See, was this because obviously the only of the New 52 that really did take off were Snyder's Batman?
Yeah.
And it was more that they needed to reboot Superman again and
Well, I think
all that again.
I think the truth of it is that they were very impressed with maybe the first 3 to 6 months sales of the New 52, and not that far on they just went, well, we're not selling anywhere near as much anymore. How do we get that fat cash again? But but I think where the Tom King run is because Batman was so successful, this does feel like a sequel almost to certainly at the start. But again, it gives you a jumping in point, and I think it does hold your hand enough cleverly to kind of go, this is how Batman got to where he is today. But it jumped out of my mind because again, it's newer and it introduces another raft of new characters. Now, not necessarily to the degree of how the Owls did and things like that, but I think he adds a lot to the universe whilst introducing us very much to characters that we are probably familiar with from other mediums. So yeah, maybe a bit of a cheater at the end, but I would say that it's potentially an entry point, but I would definitely go with Snyder's first. And if you like that, then consider a further kind of entry into trying the Tom King run as well. And
Yeah,
it's
I've
bloody
not read
brilliant.
them yet.
It's bloody brilliant, mate. It is. It is. It's the young bucks of Batman. No, I'm joking. No, it is. It is. I think for modern Batman, like anything that's say from 2000 onwards, for me is the king of anything that's come from 2000 onwards.
Yeah. One thing I will say, obviously, I'm not going to pick titles out at this point, but because I noticed it when I was doing my festive shopping, that you can look in places like HMV, and they had the New 52 run at, I think it was £6 a pop. They had a lot of standalone Batman stuff there.
Yeah.
For less than a tenner.
Well, and like because he's such an iconic character, when we talked about like jumping in points, I think you're spot on. That's one of the good things to say. Like in your more generically high street stores, you will see and be able to get hold of them. Of course, all this stuff's available on Amazon and things like that. But yeah, if you are, I mean, like Waterstones is good for this, but like if you go to WH Smith's, anything like that, they're going to have Batman stuff in there, and they're going to be these things that we are talking about because they are. And yeah, price point entry. Yeah, we said it on other episodes. It's the crack addict sale thing, isn't it? Of going, let them have volume 1 cheap, and then we can charge a bit more for volume 2 and onwards. But that's what makes them a good entry point. The price barrier isn't that great, and you'll get anything from let's say 5 to 8 issues in one of these trades, and that will really give you a chance to, I think, see whether you like the writer, whether you like the artist, whether you like the characters. But yeah, I'm a big fan.
So that will do for this week. As I said, there will be more of these deep dive start points,
Well,
and
and I was going to say, yeah, Mr. Lacey, if I've got my scheduling right, and I probably haven't, but if I've got my scheduling right, I think this one will be the last episode before we release our Christmas special.
so the reason we didn't mention it in as a start point is because you all knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Killing Joke, deep dive, Christmas special.
And I'm like a kid in a candy store. As much as it's something that I read semi-regular, the idea of reading it again with a purpose other than just enjoying it. And yeah, as you say, we've shown our love of Joker, we've shown our love of Batman, and we are like episodic. So episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but we knew Christmas was coming, and we kind of wanted to do something like a little bit out of the norm for us, like a bit of a tentpole moment. And we couldn't pick anything else, could we? It had to be Killing Joke, and it was always going to be Killing Joke. So yeah, that will be, that hopefully, as long as again I haven't got my weeks wrong, but I'll figure out a way. Even if I have, the next episode you should get after this will be our Crimbo special of a deep dive into Batman Killing Joke, or Killing Jokes, I say.
And extra homework for you if you haven't already watched it. Watch the animated film and see what you think of the comparison between the two.
Is it available anywhere at the moment?
I think it's on now.
Let me have a look.
It was.
Yeah, I feel like I've watched it on a streaming service in a not too distant past. So I'd like to think that it's available for viewers. Let me just have a look. Apparently, it's available on Sky Go for Sky subscribers.
So yeah, now.
Yeah.
Now it's got to go the same thing. So yeah. But yes, because we will obviously go over the masterpiece that is Killing Joke, the book.
I don't like it myself. No, I'm joking.
That's it. Show's cancelled. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Fuck me, I'm already home.
But as we did the Nightfall deep dive, and we intend to do more deep dives. But yeah, this is one that we certainly, when we first started talking about comic books, we kind of shared our love for it, and we just went, we need to do an episode on it. And I think, like in pretty much every episode I've done, there's been a picture of the Joker somewhere in there from the Killing Joke. So it just seemed primed and ready and right for us to do it. And hopefully, what comes across when we do it is our love for it. And a large part of what we do here is we love talking about comics. I hope that comes across, because we do love talking about comics, and I think part of that is to try and almost become infectious ourselves, to kind of get that love into other people's. And shit, like as Lacey said, if we talk about the Killing Joke and you watch it and you don't read the Killing Joke, or you read the Killing Joke and you tell us, I don't know what you're talking about, you probably will be dead to us, but we'll still take any comments that you give us anyway, because that helps with algorithms and stuff like that.
Yeah, just don't put your address anywhere online.
yeah, we'll do the kind of the end of Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, where we go and hunt anyone down who tells us that the Killing Joke isn't amazing.
Exactly. So until next time, and the big one, get ready for Christmas, motherfuckers.
Yeah, good point.
And we will see you on Christmas. Around Christmas. At some point on Christmas. We haven't decided exactly when we're putting out, but the Christmas special.
Yeah, it will be over kind of the Christmassy weekend, or somewhere in and around that. In fact, it might be Boxing Day. I might aim for Boxing Day release on that one.
So something to watch after you've had all your turkey sandwiches and turkey curry.
After you've had the next day where you've gone, I can't eat anything more, but then seen that there's more food, so you've ravaged back in again. You can then sit there dormant on your couch and just take us into your ear holes and your eye holes.
Exactly. So as always, like, subscribe, ring the bell, follow the channel, watch all the other content, pop videos, video game videos.
I know I always bang on about this when we do this bit, but if you're watching this, if you've read any of the stuff we talked about and you think it's a good entry point, drop us a comment. If you haven't, but it's intrigued you enough to kind of go, I want to, or you've got any questions about it, like, you know, maybe if you want to know if I'm only going to buy one of them, what would I buy? Drop it in the comments because we'll have a chinwag with you and find out maybe what other stuff you like and try and lead you down the right path. So use those comments, people.
And obviously, the super awesome Christmas special that may be this Friday, or you've just had it the last Friday, depending on where we release. And the Stiffies will make their return
Oh yeah,
for the festive period.
Our end of year awards. I think we were actually mixing up the categories a little bit this year and maybe going a bit broader. But yeah, you know, join us for them because we have a blast. We had a blast sort of doing them last year.
And
who does
this year?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, it'd be lovely to be there when you get your first stiffy. But you know, it's quite nice just bickering with your mates about what was better, this or this. You know, it's quite pleasurable.
So lots and lots of stuff to keep you busy over the festive period if you are some of the lucky ones that manage to, you know, not have to work for the 2 weeks.
Well, and shit, if you do have to work over the period, then just watch this while you're working.
Yeah.
Like, do it on the man's dime.
Yes. So until next time, and the Christmas special, goodbye.
Thanks for watching, and just remember, you can join the Cult of Egg by liking and subscribing to this YouTube channel. We release regular content where we talk about all things geek, all things pop culture, and all things that we're interested in. You can also come along and join the discussion on Facebook groups and Renaissance Cast. And you can join us on our Twitch channel where Stu regularly streams games. And if you'd like to support us, then please follow the link for the Patreon. Thanks very much.